because I had been the only black girl at the studio. I assumed that those features were associated with whiteness. They have them, I don't. Must mean that those things are things that only white people have. And that was so not true. What is up, artists and movers? Welcome back to my channel where we are taking our love for dance to the next level. Today's video is a little bit different. Typically when I'm gonna talk to you guys, I do my stretch with me's, but today I wanted to be here with you. You know what I'm saying? But before I jump in, I wanted to start off by highlighting one of you guys' comments on one of my previous videos, and this comment is from Rachel. I really like listening to you talk about your relationship with dance. I'm from Texas and I moved to LA to dance in 2018, but it wasn't a fulfilling lifestyle and I ended up moving back to Texas. I saw it as a failure up until recently. I feel like going to LA and realizing it wasn't what I romanticized it to be was such a good lesson. And I can totally empathize with this sentiment because I felt the exact same way not even a year ago. And it got me to thinking about who decides what is success and failure in dance and where do we get those ideas from. And I feel like, as with a lot of things, it comes from our childhood and the things that happen to us and are told to us, sometimes directly, sometimes indirectly. And so that is what prompted me to make this video. Just a disclaimer, this video is not intended to bash any specific person, any entity or establishment. I am so grateful for all of the dance training that I have gotten, but I do think there are things about it that made my experience very life-shaping, if that makes sense. And my hope is that if you too are a brown girl experiencing these things, that you can just feel a little bit more seen and can know that there are benefits to just sticking it out and making it to the other side. Also, last thing, if you have not subscribed to my channel, I highly encourage you to. I do dance vlogs and dance tips. We talk all things dance here, entrepreneurship, we got it all. And I think that's everything that I wanted to say in this intro, so let's jump into this video. So I am from Charleston, South Carolina, and I would not deem Charleston to be a very diverse city. Most people in Charleston, the dynamics are changing since I've moved, but it's mostly white and black people. Not a lot of in between and not a lot of outside of that demographic. Although it's like a small metropolitan, I would say, little hub in a mostly rural state, it does not have like an established black dance style there. Like LA has crumping and Chicago has footworking and Baltimore has go-go, and Charleston doesn't really have something like that. And so if you are from Charleston and you dance, chances are that you take ballet and jazz. And so that is what I did. I was one of those kids who was just like a natural born perfectionist, and so my parents thought dance would be a great way for me to just let loose a little bit and just to shake some of the stress that I had as a 3-year-old. I remember it was me and there were 2 other black girls there, but it was a mostly white dance studio, and that is where I grew up doing dance. And I remember I instantly fell in love with it. Psychologists talk about this idea of like flow and how that is what pushes a lot of people in these creative passions that they do, and that's definitely it for me. My brain would turn off and I would just go. And I remember around the time that I was 10, I noticed that the 2 other black girls were no longer there. This studio was also in a different part of town than where I lived, and so it was just me. I also went to predominantly white school, so it wasn't that big of a deal. And the owner of the studio, he was like what I consider like a granddaddy figure. He was so loving, and he was this small, older Australian man, and he just cared about everyone in that studio. And so one day he called me and my parents into his office. It had all of these playbills blown up on the wall, and he slaps this Dance Theater of Harlem brochure in front of us. And he's like, I think she should go to this summer intensive. Now, keep in mind, I'm 11 at this point, so I'd never heard of Dance Theater of Harlem. I had never been out of the state of South Carolina, I don't think. Maybe I had been to Florida. People where I was from, they didn't do that. They didn't really leave Charleston. Like, if you're from Charleston, you know a lot of people don't really leave. Or if they do, they come back really quick. And my parents, they didn't know much about dance. They were, I would say, lower middle class. It's not like we were ever struggling to have food on the table, but they just knew that I loved it. And so they just worked really, really hard and they made it happen. And that summer was so eye-opening for me, because up until that point, I had mostly just been around girls who looked nothing like me. And there were girls of all different sizes, thin and tall and wide with broad shoulders or downward sloped shoulders, like black girls that had really high arched feet. I don't have a high arch, I have very flat feet. And I just attribute it to, well, all black girls must have flat feet and that's just how it is. Because I had grown up only around girls who were not black, I assumed that those features were associated with whiteness, because I had been the only black girl at the studio and I didn't have those features. So I was like, oh, they have them, I don't, I'm black, they're not. Must mean that those things are things that only white people have. And that was so not true, but that was my first experience of realizing, like, oh, so my color is not hindering me. It's just, this is the body that I have and it's in this skin color. And so me being in Dance Studio of Harlem and experiencing these classes and seeing such diverse groups of what black girls look like was so new to me. Such an eye-opening experience and truly just a pivotal one for me personally. So I get back at this point, when you're 13, 14, you start to notice certain things about people's lifestyles, and I realized all these girls were homeschooled and I wasn't homeschooled, and a lot of their parents or their mothers were stay-at-home moms, and I had never had a friend whose mom was a stay-at-home mom. And it started to make me feel out of place because there were certain parts about their everyday life that I couldn't connect with. I remember kind of befriending some of these girls and going to their houses and just being in awe by how differently they live. Just the sheer size of some of their homes. And I started to notice little things like I could come to their house, but they could never really come to my house. Or just little things like that where like I was starting to become more aware. And so I couldn't connect with them on a personal level. And then I was going to school, and the school that I went to, there weren't other kids that danced as seriously as I did. And I remember one girl being like, you talk about dance too much, like that's annoying, go away. And I was like, but I like to dance. High school happens. I'd have my parents drop me off to the studio right after school, and I would just be in the dressing room doing my homework, minding my business until time came for me to have my dance class. I remember one time I was sitting and doing homework, and this girl came in, and I remember her being like 1 or 2 years older than me, and we were talking. We had always been really cool, and she whipped out her laptop to do something, and I remember seeing like a giant Confederate flag sticker on her laptop, and I just remember being like, well, this is odd. I don't want to stir up anything. It's just a sticker, right? And we're in the dance studio. I don't want to be rude, because a lot of just ballet in general, it's very posh, the whole environment. And I'm not trying to stir up anything as like being the black girl who's going to make a big deal about your computer having a Confederate flag on it. And on top of that, I was starting to notice more and more how different my body type was. My shoulders were broad and I was more muscular, and I had, a thicker build. And I remember the teacher coming around and being like, your butt isn't tucked in, your butt isn't tucked in. I'm like, it is. I just, I had a shorter neck. My neck wasn't like long and lengthy, and I'm just more muscular. It's things that are just very typical of a lot of women of color. I was just physically and mentally starting to feel very other. And on top of that, I was also going through the throes of what I now know is this rare skin disorder that I have, but at the time I didn't know that, and I was just like, I'm not meant to do ballet. I don't have the body for it. My skin is gonna look weird. And gratefully, the dance studio was also in residency with the local college, and so I actually ended up becoming friends with some of the college students just because I felt like I could I don't know. Did I feel like I could relate to college students at 14? I don't know, but I just became closer with them. And so all of that, plus my dance teacher having passed away, I was just like, you know what? I'm just not gonna dance right now. And was totally happy with that. I was doing the regular high school girl thing. And then I started getting this inkling to want to dance again. I had learned modern when I was in New York. I had learned modern the summers afterward when I went to the Governor's School of Arts and Humanities. And it felt like the people at the studio back at home, they had always pushed me with this idea of like, you need to go to be in a modern company, you need to be an A-lead. Okay, that's what I'm supposed to do. I went to Philadelphia to do their summer intensive. I was exploring a new city and getting to be more independent. This feels great to be recognized and feel like I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, but I'm not enjoying it. And I was just so bored by modern technique. And at the end of the summer intensive, one of the heads of the company at Philadelphia, she basically came to me and said, we have a second company and we would love for you to think about joining our second company. And everyone knows the second company for any modern company is a stepping stone into possibly getting into the actual major company. But that also was kind of like the signal to me that I don't want to be in a dance company, because when the opportunity was presented to me, I said no. And I told the new owner of the studio, it was a couple, a husband and wife couple, and I told the husband, I was like, hey, because I was so excited. I'm like, I got a job offer. Like, I can't wait to tell him and like let him know I'm something, you know what I mean? And so I go to tell him, I'm like, yeah, I got offered a spot in the second company, but I turned it down because I just don't think that's what I want to do. And he goes, so what are you gonna do? Shake your ass in a music video? I don't like how you said that. I just remember being very caught off guard. And so after that, I was kind of done. And so my senior year, I didn't dance anymore. I felt like my body just wasn't right for the kind of dancers that they were looking for. They were kind of trying to bring in new dancers of a certain look and a certain lifestyle. And when it came time to decide to go to college, I still had this like idea and this memory of me loving dance so much. I had always wanted to learn about choreography, dance history, and dance anatomy, and I had never gone to any arts schools, no arts high schools or middle schools or anything like that. So I ended up going to Jacksonville University in Florida. I thought I was gonna be the worst one there and that I was just gonna kind of like be scraping by. And I realized that I was actually really talented when it came to like doing technical styles. Because I had trained in them for so long, I just didn't have the stereotypical body type for that. And what was cool is that not a lot of people in the dance department did either. There were some that did, but most of them, they were kind of like misfits like me. And so I really fell back in love with dance again, and ultimately that's what made me decide to move to LA. And I decided to pursue the being in the commercial industry, and that is how I ended up here. Now mind you, I did this at a point where I had never taken a hip-hop class in my life. I had one hip-hop class in college, and that was it. And so when I moved to LA and realized that like people aren't really big on technique here, I was like, oh, okay. All right, I gotta learn some other stuff. So then that's when I began to find a love for all of these different hip hop styles and how it can blend with so many different ways to use your body. And I have just become deeper and deeper in love with the art of movement and how many different ways there are to move. And that is pretty much what brought me to making this YouTube channel, because I realized that there's a need for it with people who look like me. There's a need for people who look like me who do have technique to feel like they have a space here. And for those that don't have the technical education, how can I make it accessible in a way that it has nothing to do with their socioeconomic status, has nothing to do with their ability to be homeschooled or to create these isolated environments where they can only study dance and nothing else. And so that's what's brought me to making a YouTube channel. And that is also why I'm so passionate about entrepreneurship and why I started my dance brand, because you know, the idea that people are shocked that we just now have point shoes that are brown, skin toned, and ballet shoes being made in skin tones for everyone, I am not at all shocked, because the people who make those don't look like us. And so I want to push the boundaries of what those standards are in every way, not just when it comes to color, but when it comes to what we define our careers as, how we establish futures for ourselves and develop generational wealth, and all of these things that I feel everyone should have accessibility to, not just if you are a dancer that looks a certain way or if you're not a dancer at all. So if you guys want to see more dance content, then please subscribe to my channel, and if you enjoyed this video, then please give it a like. And before I go, if you are a brown girl who does ballet and you're watching this video, first of all, I'm so proud of you. And if you love ballet as much as I do and did and always will, then that is a sign for you to continue doing it. God can use your love for something in so many different ways, and for me, one of the ways has been this YouTube channel. It's been just a different avenue for me to touch people and share how much I love the art of movement. Please just know that there is reason for you being in the position that you are now, and it is so that you can help others in the future. That's all I have to say, I think. I love you guys, and I will see you in my next video next weekend. Later.